Keep hearing them talking. They frontin'. No competition, they bluffing. They don't want nothing. Be quiet. They don't want nothing. They don't want nothing. Keep hearing them talking. They frontin'. No competition, they bluffing. They don't want nothing. Be quiet. They don't want nothing. They don't want nothing. Spit it like the weather.
You keep going.
Oh.
What were we saying?
No, what you were saying with the like ketones and when you're cutting, like the weight doesn't move at the same speed, just bar speed, and then the stability point. Like, so then you end up because it feels heavier than it is, even though you know it's the same ass thing and you're attacking just as hard, like whatever rep in that thing, you're now like oof, and then rather getting one more rep at say just mass say 100, you're now 100 pounds light. But what does that do to your volume for that day for the stimulus? Just for hypertrophy return, the hyperplasia return. What's it do for the next day when you're like, okay, now I'm paying yesterday for the food I ate today. And so I was trying to think of how to get ahead after you're talking about like when you're joking on your main about eating all the glutens and getting inflamed. Like how can I mitigate either inflammation or maximize nutrient return?
Mitigate meaning like how do you want to take it down? Period. Yeah. While cutting.
Yeah, and it's like if you're not feeding it, it's like so because you're at a deficit for your nutrients. It's not that you can't grow muscle, but essentially you're trying to salvage the loss of muscle.
Sure, of course.
So like you're not strengthening your cells, so like your fats, your lipids now, because hypothetically you're a deficit, so those are gonna be low too. You're not making if we use it like as a glass.
Spin everybody up on this conversation real quick. So what he's talking about is just recently you adjusted to start leaning down some, right? So he just started leaning down, and in that process, the question he's trying to solve, like he's saying, is not so much how do I build muscle, but how do I be as anti-catabolic with my muscle as possible, meaning like how do I prevent from cannibalizing my muscle while cannibalizing my fat tissue and keeping as much muscle as possible. Yeah. Go ahead, good sir.
No, so the first thing is we have to look at binding the protein, like we have to have it just to not degrade that. And then getting the fats at the physiological min so it doesn't affect our hormones, and we at least don't then pull them, break them down into glycogen to be used full circle glyconeogenesis to not lose muscle. So eventually you're paying the man out of one of the three bins to do it. So when Jermaine and I were talking about how we're adjusting flow rates of the nutrients to coincide better with the workout, so that
we had a good question that kind of flows with that as well, right? So the question was macros to support quick recovery from a max effort, right?
Yeah.
And that can be weighted max effort or just workout volume, stimuli, intensity max workout.
Hell yeah. We basically talk this every day. Yeah. We were talking this last week, and so you have 6 receptors that can produce and receive the insulin piece. So if you were to mentally think about this as like a 6-lane highway, while you're working out, it's not a problem to have just one of those because only one of them really takes that pure dextrose, fructose, glucose straight in the receptor. So while you're working out, use it.
He drew
all the glucose transport.
I did, yeah.
He should glute 4.
He should be a professor.
Well, I was doing this. I was like explaining as so if 5 lanes of traffic are off, but you're using them, it's not bad. You don't store them as energy because you have to use them for ATP for that max effort or immediately post that max effort. So we don't worry about those ones. But then the recovery pieces open all the lanes. Get a low GI, glycemic index. Get a carb that your body can use across all spectrums, and you'll allow that recovery faster.
So what's examples for?
Real quick, let me spin the world up on it. Let me translate for you people real quick. I'm fluent in Rob and Jermaine. That's why I sit here in the middle.
That's good.
So what he's saying is, during your workout, if the types of food that you have ingested are very slow carbohydrate or insulin-inducing carbs, no problem because you're not storing any carbs while you're working out. You might utilize some for energy. And then he's saying post-workout, for you to eat a Snickers bar, for instance, wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't be bad compared to any other time of the day because you want all the lanes of traffic that lead to muscle recovery to be wide open at that point.
Yeah, 100%. That's what we were talking about was why, because we had been talking about the previous question about why somebody comes in, they ate what they ate on the weekend, Monday's rough, Tuesday a little better, Wednesday's not so bad, they feel good Thursday and Friday, rinse and repeat. And it was
actually, so here's a fun little thought process, right? And that's So a lot of time they talk about the anabolic window, meaning like the 1 hour after you work out. It's much wider than that, right?
Yeah.
So like it's a silly thing. It would be like cutting your hand and thinking that you're going to hop in an oxygen chamber, like a hyperbaric chamber that takes you down, which increases how fast you can recover. And you do it for 1 hour, and then you come out of 1 hour, and all of a sudden your hand's healed. Like that's not going to happen, and neither is your muscle going to heal that fast. Now, what they do show is that your uptake of glycogen is much higher compared to outside of that hour. But when we're talking about like percentage of replacement, and these are arbitrary numbers, but I think they're pretty close. You're looking at like the ability to replace 100% used is some like 14% compared, but that still leaves you 86% that's unfilled. So you're not just going to fill up what you use in a workout 1 hour post workout. That's bananas. So you need the entire day. But here's a cool fact. Let's say you work out and then post workout up to about 3 hours afterwards you don't eat, right? Or you eat something that doesn't fuel your body. You go about your day, you don't think about it, and then you're the next day you're eating a bunch of garbage like through the weekend, right? It doesn't have to be garbage, but not as strict as it was. Well, fun fact is from the time in which you chose to not fuel your body's trying to figure out how to fuel what it just did, right? So it's trying to replace already what it just did, and you didn't give it anything. And so then what ends up happening is the next day while you're eating the garbage stuff, well, your body has already mostly figured out how to store that. And where did it get it from? Well, most likely it's cannibalizing other muscle in order to fill these muscle stores. So think about it like this. I do a bunch of upper body stuff on Friday, and I don't fuel it well on Friday afternoon and Saturday. So what happens is my body will cannibalize from my legs to help feed to my arms and upper body that I just used. And then by Saturday, right, and going into Sunday, I haven't properly fueled this. So what happens is now as I start to eat garbage, well, this is already taken care of. So now the garbage ends up going to fat. And guess what happens by the time you get to Monday is you catabolize from your legs, and now Monday feels like crap, right? So it shows you how you can leapfrog this system. So really, the big takeaway is after you work out, the workout just started. Like the building, the anabolic process just started. You work out, now what you eat is super important, right?
Yeah. 100%
especially for the next 24 hours, because outside of that, if you haven't started to initiate this recovery process, your body's going to figure it out, right? And then after that, all the food that you're eating is probably going to fat tissue again.
So does it matter right after the workout, or should you right after the workout eat more high glycemic and like the Gatorades or the white rice and all that, and then as the day continues, switch to low glycemic, like the brown rice is the...
That's a good thought process, right? So like at the point in which you can uptake the most, take in the simplest form of stuff that you can take in the quickest.
And then like cut down the high glycemic carbs down to like vegetables and...
That's generally what they... Well, not so much vegetables, yes, but something that's like brown rice, white rice.
Yeah, brown rice, sweet potato, stuff like that.
That's right, exactly, right? And so the reason why is, as he said, is the lanes of traffic are going to close. So like I only got 5 fingers, so I'm not going to do 6 lanes. But 5 fingers are open right afterwards. Then maybe like an hour and a half later, this many open. And even if they're the exact same glucose transporters, just the number that are, what happens is as you do strength training, the pressure actually brings them to the surface of your cells, right? So it's kind of like, boom, they pop out, and then through time they're dropping away. And so the number that can actually uptake gets less. It doesn't mean that it's done taking in carbs, right? But the number becomes less. And so then if you have this abundance of blood sugar, well, your body tries to keep everything in homeostasis, right? So, if you got, like just, it's like almost like people coming through a car, right? So like imagine you got 2 car doors open, right? Back seat, and you got like one person hops in, then they hop to the other seat, then another person can hop in, then they hop out, and they continue to hop seat to seat, right? Like this is the only way to get through the hallways in the car, whatever it is, right? So right after you work out, it's more like you got a minivan, both doors are open and people are hopping through, right?
Yeah.
So imagine this analogy where the car's sitting here, minivan's gone, you're back to a car, and you got like 7 people, and only one can hop in at a time. Well, 5 of them get bored and go like, I'm gonna go walk over here to this car,
Right.
and that car's
Yeah,
fat.
that's what else, yeah.
That's right. That's it. That's an analogy by Jordan Bowen.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
But that's good because most people will take that as a context, right? Unless you're sciencey or you understand like Krebs cycle or
For
cellular
sure.
respiration of those pieces, before you even go down that point, like how does it translate to me, the person who just wants to eat healthier and better, like while reducing inflammation, all these things, and then
Absolutely.
that's what couples with what do you eat, and
Yeah,
that's
right.
a pretty good explanation, really simplistic.
Pretty
It's just
basic
like,
and simple. Yeah.
if I eat a candy bar can't go through the car. And if I eat really slow things, nobody's getting super bored, and it just keeps working.
That's right. And you know what? That lends itself to what are your goals in mind, right?
Yeah.
So like if you're trying to get leaner, then don't give yourself a bunch of carbs. Just keep a high abundance of protein. And then what's going to end up happening is if you have enough protein, you're not going to cannibalize the muscle, right? But you will figure out how to replace the energy storage, right? And so where's the energy storage going to come from? Well, often, as long as you have enough protein on board, you can then pull it from fat at that point. Now, the byproduct of that is you're, no matter what, not going to be as recovered performance-wise as you would when you're replacing carbohydrates. But that's the goal. So just like when you're getting leaner, just expect some workouts just feel like crap. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just part of the process.
Speaking of not recovered, my lats haven't recovered yet.
Haven't they? Well, you know what?
Those ring
You got them
pull-ups.
Cobra lats, them
got
ring
me,
pull-ups,
man.
right?
Got me. I was
That's
like,
it. That's it. Those are one of the. So I learned those from not the exactly like that, but very similar to that from Ben Pekulski. He was third in Olympia years ago, and I went down and did his seminar on hypertrophy, and man, it was pretty interesting. Actually, it kind of segues to like why some muscles grow faster, right? Rob, you got a pretty balanced build. A lot of that is obviously it's your hard work and everything else, but the neat thing is one of the smallest things that happens different, if you want to say a genetics in people, is their carrying handle, how their hands naturally lay. And if your hands lay like real neutral position, then you're probably going to have a pretty balanced build. If your hands are really internal, turned, then you're going to probably have much more of like a back and tricep build and a smaller bicep and chest build. And if your hands are turned out a little more, then you're going to have more of a bicep, right? So like Jessie, my wife's a perfect example. She doesn't have to do like biceps at all, and her biceps will grow because of where her carrying handle's at. My carrying handle's turned in, and so what I learned through time was like I had a hard time working my biceps because I would try to do what all of the precedents set up to that point, like what a proper position to hold to do curls and stuff was. And what would end up happening, I was so externally rotated in my shoulder that I couldn't support that position very well. And I would start to get like smoked in my shoulder when I'm trying to work my biceps, right? So any other thoughts on why some muscles grow and others do not?
No, we actually talked that exact piece, and so one of the things Danny, Jermaine, and I were talking was like thumb grip and gripping position for everything from overhead press, why you bring it around for same thing, radiali positioning, and coupling of where you're stacking bones, to curls, where if you do hammer curls, having a thumb grip or a restless grip, and why you can target the biceps more than using the forearm, which exactly is. So you eventually squeeze harder and harder. You internally rotate by externally rotating versus a neutral position where you're actually isolating the muscle.
For sure.
And it's just like fibers. If people don't know the fibers are what they're trying to recover, it's the same thing. What's end state? Do you want to be plyometric? Do you want to be really fast firing? Are you trying to do that? Or do you want the slow grind, really hard deadlift? Because those fibers themselves recover at much deviated rates. So what are you doing? What type of muscle are you building? Are you building bulk muscle?
Yeah.
Or are you building fast athlete, reactive muscle?
Yeah.
My calves been asking me that for years. And you're like, what we got to do, man? I like,
But it's because you use them all the time. The same thing is like when people do crunches to try and get abs, like that ain't the way you do it.
Yeah,
You're
it's
training
gotta be
the energy
targeted.
system's the wrong way.
gotta be targeted.
Exactly. So people who
Right.
try and do calves by doing 5 sets of 10 no weight, well, good job. You just basically walked
Did not-
that same
yeah.
exact distance
That's
with
right.
this much deviation in your calves.
That's right. That's like Jess. People ask Jess, and even like her core program is designed around this. That there's 3 different stimuli every week. You have something that's heavy, something that's like isometric, right, holding position, and something that's a little bit lighter and moving. So she doesn't repetitively do anything. And programming wise, I do about the same thing, right? So when I program, people are always trying to track it. Well, there's a lot of styles of strength. So like, I'll try to give a fast and easy answer to a very complex question, right? So you got like, from the start, you got like explosive strength, which is just like how fast you can move your body. Then you got speed strength, which is kind of like how fast you can, the fastest you can externally move an object. Then you got strength speed, which is still fast but approaching maximal weights. Then you got absolute strength, you got isometric strength, you got strength endurance, right? So you have all these different facets of what your muscle fibers can do. So you got to train all those, and that just alone deals with really moving either your body or moving an external object. So that's only displacement of an object. And then outside of that, you have how's your cardio, right? Like how strong is your heart and lungs, and how much, and strength endurance piece, how long can you move objects? And then outside of that, on the other side of that coin that I have to program for is the aesthetics. So we're trying to figure out how do the aesthetics and how do bigger biceps tie in with moving this, and how much does moving this degrade my ability to do this regularly. And so this is kind of a crazy thing. This is all the things you have to look at, but in this whole picture here, if you only do lifting heavy, well then what happens is you lose control of the muscles you're trying to use, and you get slow. And once you get slow and loss of control go hand in hand, right? So if you show me an athlete that can move very quickly and control themselves, I'll also show you an athlete that probably can build muscle pretty easily, because control go hand in hand. So when you only train heavy, you lose the ability to control what you're trying to do, and you're just surviving, if you will. And then if you only train slow and light, well then, same thing. You'll have good slow control, but as it speeds up, you'll have to use other muscles to help get that fired up and moving quickly. Yeah. And here's a fun thought process, right? So a lot of people think, well, genetically, like this is what I probably thought for the longest time. It's like, didn't matter how much I worked my biceps, they did not grow until probably like a year ago. And that's because even all the way up to a year ago, I didn't understand carrying angles, which like still most people don't. And when I say carrying angle, I mean as you lay your hands where your thumbs point, right? And so maybe we'll flash up a photo. We'll take a photo on the back half of this with the three of us standing relaxed and take a look at thumb position, and maybe it'll make a little bit more sense. Try to circle that and highlight that. And so when a muscle is weakest in its shortest range and its longest range. So for instance, the shortest range of your bicep is not right here, it's up here, right? So like you people that are watching, so flex, you guys do this with me. Flex, and you're like, yep. And then take your hand and shove it behind your head and feel how much tighter, almost to a cramp, that your bicep can go, right? That's because this isn't the short range of your muscle, this is the short range of your muscle. So as you pull it all the way up and back, that's the shortest range. Well, the longest range isn't straight. It's like if you want to stretch your bicep, what do? You put it on something and you stretch. So this is the longest range, and this is the shortest range. What we'll do is we train only in the middle range, right? And so the middle is where it's the strongest and it's the least challenge. So part of that is like when we do curls laying on an incline. Yeah. Well, that's to get to the longest range of your muscle, also known as one of the weakest ranges. And interestingly, the weakest range is actually the shortest range. So like most people think like this is the shortest range of your chest. Well, as it crosses your body, it is. And a fun little thing you can do with somebody, here go challenge Jermaine real quick. You know what? I'm gonna challenge Rob, because everybody wants to see Rob get challenged. So this is fun, like, right? That, so we'll get Rob to stand up real quick and do this, right? So right here, like this, if I try to pull Rob's arm apart, he's pretty strong. So squeeze, right? He's got like a 400 plus pound bench, right? It's pretty good. So he's pretty strong in this position. Ready? Don't let me go. Right, this is nice mid-range right here. But if I get him to cross in the short range, now squeeze there. This is short range. Don't let me press. Right, I can almost do it like just easily. Right, it's crazy. Like 2 fingers. Right, squeeze. Right, There we go. And then I get back to the middle range, and that's where he's real strong. So, isn't that crazy how weak you feel in that position?
Yeah.
Kind of hurts your feelings, right?
Humbling.
So it's not like some McDojo ninja stuff we
Yeah.
just showed. It's not like fake karate just now. The thing is when you're in the shortest range or the longest range of your muscle, your body's not very strong there, right? But that's also where you can get some of your best hypertrophy gains is in those two ranges. So this is what I'm saying is forever when I would do bicep curls before, well, my arm has a natural hanging. My carrying handle is like my thumbs are almost pointed inside. Pretty good for grappling, not great for bicep curls. So because my shoulder is slightly rotated forward, when I would go to do curls, I would turn my hand out and start to curl, right? The way that you've always been taught. And as I externally rotate my shoulder to its longest range on the outside, shortest external rotation, longest internal rotation, as I rotated out, it was the equivalent of me holding my shoulder in this position. And so since I'm so rotated, now I'm trying to work my bicep, but this is in such a shortened and lengthened for the internal rotation position that I couldn't really stabilize my shoulder great. And since I couldn't stabilize my shoulder, I couldn't specifically activate my bicep. So I don't do curls like this anymore. I actually just do them like straight inside the whole time. And you're like, what? That's not how you do curls. Well, this is a hinge, and it doesn't care where an arm is pointing. This is just a hinge like on a door. So I actually end up curling tight to the inside. And the reason why is this is a neutral position for me, right? This would be shorten on the internal rotation and lengthen on the external, and this is the opposite of that. So for me, this is like a normal, comfortable position, right? And when you look at these guys carrying handles, probably both of them, their thumbs are much more in a neutral position, right? Which lends itself to build easily.
It's funny, we do the same thing, so we always rotate the biceps by week.
Yeah.
If, like, clinically, the glassman would just be bringing it in front for just the isolation to alleviate the shoulder. Mm-hmm. Usually we try to couple this, like, if we had, like, a hard strength portion for Tuesday and we get buys at the end of the day, then we'll purposely alleviate any more utilization of the shoulder to isolate the bicep. Same thing on Friday if we come in on this tempo. I'll lean forward as if I'm trying to mirror a preacher and just isolate it and focus on going really slow to have a thumbless grip and really work both heads of the bicep while trying to alleviate the shoulder and the tri.
That's right. And you know what? For if you're watching, you think like, well, maybe I should turn my shoulder in all the time. It depends. If you're somebody who has a really externally rotated hand, well, this is going to be the same as this for me, right? So this is going to start to roll your shoulder to a position that your body doesn't like. So you really just need to try to figure out what feels comfortable and what position you can support your shoulder in, like he's saying. And if it didn't make perfect sense, he's saying that on the back of all the volume they already do, if their shoulders have already been worked a lot, they don't want to challenge the shoulder even more in that position, so they try to find somewhere to live in that.
Otherwise, like if my shoulder's not smoked, like when I don't like doing biceps. That's one of the worst. No, seriously, that's one of the worst exercises. I don't like the burn. I don't like the burn.
You don't like the feeling of the bicep.
Yeah, I don't like the burn. So, but I know that. So sometimes we have our hand turned internally when doing curls, but then like when I want to make it harder, like if you find yourself doing bicep curls and it's like really easy, you go really heavy. To keep your palm flat, like flat out.
Supinated.
When you're supinated the whole time. Instead of turning in, keep it supinated and go the whole range, and you'll find that it's a lot harder to do bicep curls. And you'll work the full bicep.
That's it. And the bicep is a supinator, right?
Yeah.
So if you put your hand on your bicep, you turn your hand over, you'll feel your bicep. Go ahead, check it out, man.
Yeah,
you feel it shorten up, right? So that is one of the functions of it in its shortest position. So 100%. You don't necessarily want to just do hammer curls, but if you are going to supinate your hand, make sure that it's part of challenging. Meaning if you're holding a dumbbell dead center and your hands are down here, and the first thing you do is start to supinate your hand. Well, this doesn't require anything because your hand's center. So if you drop the dumbbell head down as you pull and start to supinate, you're going to have to turn the bottom of that dumbbell head, and that's going to end up making you have to challenge that supination.
Yeah, it just keeps my bicep activated at the bottom, because when I'm sideways, it turns off.
That's right.
So
it won't stretch all the way down. Yep, that's exactly right. And then It's also the response to why do some muscles grow faster? Well, the reason why some muscles grow faster, think about this for a second. What does it take to grow a muscle? Well, you have to stimulate something, so let's put that to the side. You have to have enough hormones to be, and if you're any sense of normal at all, like physiologically, then your hormones are fine. If you can grow any muscle, then you can grow every muscle, right? Including your calves. You can grow every muscle, right? And then if you have the hormones, right, which pretty much everybody does, again, if you can grow any muscle, then you can grow every muscle. Last is, do you have the building blocks? Do you have enough protein? And you don't have to have carbohydrates. Really, you better make sure you have enough protein, right? And then you're still going to need a surplus in order to add to, the hyperplasia piece, which is how much energy you have inside the muscle, other organelles and storage, regardless. So if these two things are true, or these three things are true in a different muscle, then one of those things is not true for the muscle that won't grow. So like logically think about it. Do you still have the same hormones? Are you getting enough food? If you are, then that means the stimuli is not targeting the actual muscle. And that was it for me, as I was like, man, I try to work these biceps all the time. There's almost nothing I can do to make these things grow. And then it finally realized that if any muscle can grow, every muscle can grow. The problem is I'm not actually stimulating the muscle, right? And so, like for me, I can go and my shoulders will grow. Like I just don't even have to think about it. But it's where they attach on my arm and how my traps are. So my traps support my shoulder really well because I have big traps. That's right, trap game strong. And then where my actual connection in my shoulder is makes it very easy because it's set so dead center versus forward or backwards that I do a front raise, I work my side delt. I do a rear raise, I work my side delt. Everywhere I go, my side delt. It's the other reason that at like 200 pounds, I've done a 245 pound shoulder press, right? So like that's pretty damn good for my height and for most people. No dip, no nothing. If I dip, we can put a host of weight on there. And the same thing, like my arms were way undersized for somebody that could do that, and most of the reason was I just didn't know how to train them. So some muscles only grow faster because you're not targeting, and the only way you can target at that point is to slow it down and get control. And then once you get control, then you can speed up. So stabilize the muscle, make sure the muscles not, or the supporting stabilized muscles are not in a longer short range holding position, and then slow it down enough to actually do what?
Grow.
Flex that muscle and grow. That's it, man. That's it.
That's pretty good.
You guys seen, put a little controversy. You guys ready for some controversy? I don't know if you guys seen this. Have you guys seen Game Changer?
No.
Neither? Oh, man. It's sweeping the nation. It's not even going to land on your desk because you won't care. But it's a movie that they made on hold responses to best appropriate level. It's a movie they made on why veganism is superior to animal protein, right? All right, so man, there's honestly a lot to unpack in the movie if you haven't seen it. You know what? We'll do this. We'll make you two guys go watch it on Netflix, and then we can talk about it next week. So here's the deal: in the short run, you absolutely can be a vegan and get enough supplementation, especially if you're on that style of diet for kind of personal reasons of like you don't like factory farming and all that stuff. And I support all that. I think that's awesome. If you're doing it because you're in desire of the greatest performance outcomes, well, the reality is it's just not a good look. And we'll break that down next week a little bit more. Again, like I'm a fan of every diet that somebody can stay consistent with as long as that diet's providing to the goals they want, right? So like if you want to be a carnivore, there's carnivore diets. You can do that too. I still would recommend you do some supplementation. If you want to be a vegan or a vegetarian, you can do that as well. And again, I recommend that, especially if you're a vegetarian, by the way. Eat eggs, right? Yeah. And like sometimes when people first hear that without thinking about it, like it's an animal. It's not an animal. It's free. The hen is going to lay that egg. It's unfertilized. Nothing's going to happen except for it's going to spoil it. It cannot become life. It's not an animal. It's just half of a chromosome chain from a chicken that has a lot of protein in it. So eat eggs if you're vegetarian. I would highly recommend that. If you're vegan, obviously it's no animal products. So for you, it's a little different scenario. And then one of the things, like for vegans, period, again, if you want to be a vegan, awesome, no sweat, is be careful, because if you started this with the pursuit of health, in order to get enough protein, quite often what you have to do is you have to eat manufactured foods that are so far from the original state, right? You can't eat just whole foods generally as a vegan and get enough protein. It's just not possible. You're not going to eat that much rice and that much beans, so you have to figure out how to eat fake meat style stuff that has a lot more packed in. And now, because of the processing and everything else, that you're probably actually moving away from fitness.
Is that what that tofu stuff is?
Yeah, that's right. Tofu, fried. Like, I'm vegan and the vegan, but then you end up eating a bunch of fried tofu and stuff, and that's definitely not a better look as well. So we can unpack it some next week. If you guys like Joe Rogan, he just had a guy on that does a better job than I'll be able to do, because of his depth of research on it, that is fantastic on looking at the other side of the coin. And as soon as I said vegan, everybody kind of giggled a little bit. So the three of us are biased towards eating animal protein, right? And so we're going to be a biased conversation no matter what. So like realistically, I will try to look at both sides of the coin as much as possible, but whatever you do is still your bias, right? So like, I can totally understand why somebody would want to be a vegetarian or a vegan, but because I eat animal products, no matter what, I'm biased. That's just how it is, right? Like, I'm not unrealistic about that. So if you guys want to see two sides of the coin, watch the Game Changers, and then watch this Joe Rogan podcast. If you type in Joe Rogan vegan, it's Chris something's his name. But you can watch both sides, and you can watch them both unpack both sides. And try not to get too wrapped up in what we do in our modern day, which is what? Only look at one side of the coin. Right. So unpack both sides. I know I've been asked about this, and so you guys watch it, and we'll spin it up next week, whatnot. Hey, real quick, another question we had was heart rate and strength training, right? So like all the different fitness trackers, if you will, want to know where your heart rate was at and how much you did, right? And that's going to now tell you how fit or unfit you are. Like, what's your thoughts there?
So first and foremost, it's not that it's false, but you're expecting an algorithmic expression of what your heart rate is. Right. So depending the quality of the heart rate monitor, where the heart monitor is placed, and your hydration will either greatly increase the incorrectness of it, or have to be really close. That's right. Well, it's never truly going to capture.
Do you have a reason real quick on why hydration?
Well, how easy? So what the heart rate monitor does, it measures the electromagnetic current that goes through your body. So, and it gives you that as an expression of what your beats per minute is, because the heart expends electricity. The reason hydration measures, if you're dehydrated, it has a harder time getting through it to get the reading. If you're super hydrated, not like hyponatremic, meaning you have too much water in the system, then you're in a pretty good window where you get it. But statistically speaking, 70% of the population is dehydrated anytime.
That's right.
So you come in here dehydrated, you start getting it, and now you want to get a true yield or a metric of what your heart rate was. You're probably missing the mark on it.
And not only that, but the way that the heart responds is to pressure within the vessels already. So let's say you're at 80 beats a minute, and all of a sudden you remove 25% of the water out of that vessel. So what's going to happen is the vessel's going to shrink, right? Except the size of the container is the same. So the amount in it shrinks. And so what happens is your body wants to keep that pressure. And the only way it can do that is it can either pump harder, like literally physically harder, or it can increase rate in order to get enough oxygen to it, right? So the amount of hydration already, like you said. And so what we're doing is we're going to build a case for the problem with following your heart rate, and then we'll talk about how you can actually utilize it. So what else?
It's 100% true. So Eddie Hall, when they did him for the 1,100-pound deadlift, he was in excess of 200 beats a minute for just that lift. And that's the exact thing, is vasoconstriction. So everything's squeezing as hard as it can just to get him not to die. Because it's fight or flight at that point. The inverse is, say, a 5K pace, where yes, you can probably get a very close, at least maybe 10% deviation on what your heart rate is, because it's steady state. But when you do a maximal lift, first off, you mentally check into work. You're about to go, so your heart rate's spiking. So now you're in excess of 100 beats a minute. You grab it, you start going, you get the eccentric portion. Everything is constricting. Intracranial pressure goes up. A bunch of physiological deviations now start mirroring your psychological deviation of how hard this is about to be. So
And
your heart adjusts
specifically,
to
the
it.
question on this was the in between that. So you have like a 5K, then you have a max effort.
Yeah.
The in between that was when I'm doing bicep curls, I don't see a spike in my heart rate, but I know I'm utilizing right glycogen and muscle at this point. How is it that none of the fitness trackers or whatever can account for the fact that I don't have this heart rate change and because really the byproduct ultimately is people are probably, I assume, coming down to like, what did I do and trying to figure this out? What's my caloric adjustment for this workout? And for them, because their heart rate stays so steady, they're thinking, well, I know I did something, but this tracker thinks I did very little, right?
It's energy systems too, though. So when you deviate that, like, it's tracking your oxidative system while you're doing curls. You're glycogenic. You're doing maybe 69 seconds of work. So you're taxing the muscle. You're taking the energy away from the muscle. Right. Your heart rate in the monitor now is going to capture that. So your heart may not spike while you're doing the work, but as soon as you get done the work, now your heart is like, oh, I need to go fix it. So the engine checks on and starts sending those nutrients, so that the heart rate will go up and work on the backside of it.
Right. Because
What does checking your heart rate do for you while you're working out?
yeah, it's a good question.
I mean,
That's your
why-
TDE.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, I've never not checked my heart rate while I'm working out. You know, I know if I'm tired or not. So I just go until
Right.
I can't. The fatigue's. I'm like, okay,
That's
I did
it.
enough.
He said, I go to the pump, don't allow me to continue.
Yeah.
Right?
So I mean, like, but seriously, like,
Right.
should I check my heart rate to see if
It's a good question.
If it's
It's
good,
a really
or-
good question. Right? So what is heart rate good for? Okay, here's what let's start with what it's not good for. It's not good for it's not good for looking on the internet and finding what should be a standard for who you are.
Right.
Okay. So like if you look on the internet and you think, okay, well, if I want to get better at running, what's my target heart rate? Well, it's a pretty silly way they do this. It's based upon you have this max number and you take away your age and that's your target heart rate. Mm-hmm. That's crazy. Like, you're telling me that me and somebody who's 30 pounds lighter than me and 30 pounds heavier than me, because we're all the same age, we all have the same size heart generally, we're all going to manifest completely different. So for starters, that's not a good measure at all. And you have to say, well, why did they do that? Well, they're trying, people say like, well, where should I train my heart? And if the answer is like, depends, like that doesn't help a lot of people. So their best effort is they're trying to get an answer that gets somebody on the right track. So here's the answer. Every scientist has to look at things and figure out what's repeatable and measurable and observable, right? So for you, what's a good reason to have a heart rate? Well, if you're trying to burn body fat specifically, right?
Right.
Okay. You need to just figure out, what's your baseline look like? And you can't probably figure that out in a day because there's so many variables to who you are. But if you wear a heart rate monitor and you're doing a workout that's supposed to be more fat burning than it is just pure power and glycogen intensive,
right,
and you track that across 5 to 10 workouts, well, you can get what a sustainable heart rate looks like for you, which might be 130 beats a minute, 140 beats a minute, right?
Right.
Okay.
But I understand as far as you got folks that are either doing bodybuilding or whatever. And so there's a calculation you do where you want to track your heart rate and it's got to stay at so many beats for X amount of time.
That's why it's
to
terrible
burn.
for that.
Yeah.
But for actually lifting.
Okay, so that brings the second the second great reason to track your heart rate. So your heart rate is great to track, again, for figuring out what zone you're in, right? So if I come in and I want to train specifically glycogen, then I should, and I'm getting it, well then I should have some heart rate spikes that are exceeding what the steady state that I've established for me looks like. So if 140 is normal for me, and this is arbitrary numbers, right? So don't take it and go, well, that's it, that's the one. So for me, if 140 is my steady state, breathing through my nose, I know that this is almost, no matter how long I run for, how long I ride the bike or whatever, within 10 beats, this is where I stay. Mm-hmm. If I come in and I'm doing jump training and I'm moving really quickly, I want to make sure I get outside of 140 at points, right? Because that's going to help ensure I'm not just oxidative training, that I am depleting glycogen. So for that instance, it's good. For the second thing it's really good for is figuring out how you're recovering. And this is probably what it's better for, which is if I wear a heart rate monitor when I sleep, which is like the ultra level of crazy recovery check, but depends on how far you want to take this dance.
Right.
You wake up and you're at 60 beats a minute, then you've been training really hard and you've been 60 beats a minute, and then a week later you wake up and you're at 72 beats a minute. Well, that elevated heart rate means something. And it means that you're starting to overtax your system. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So now I walk around at a pretty high heart rate. I have an irregular heartbeat, which means like in a regular heartbeat is like it goes beat, 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 beat. There it goes. Is it done? All right. So I think we're about to go blank on this. So we'll just, we are. All right. We're in the black now. So we'll finish this piece, and we're having technical difficulties on that bad boy today. But so in a regular heartbeat just means it beats all over the place. It's like beat, 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 beat. Like if you track my heart rate, you'd be like, dude, is this dude dead or alive? Right? I almost got kicked out of the military for it, but they didn't find it till I was way deep in training, like 3 months out from graduating. So they were like, well, he's made it this far, right? So for me, anytime I track my heart rate, I have to track it like if I want to figure out a recovery-based heart rate, like if I wake up in the morning and want to track my heart rate, I have to do that across about like 5 minutes to get what a real metric looks like because my heart's so erratic. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
If you have a normal heart rate, which pretty much everybody does, then whatever your heart rate reads across 10 seconds is probably pretty accurate. If you don't, then just measure it across an entire minute and see what it looks like. So when you wake up, you can just grab your pulse and you could count, right? So start your timer, count your pulse. If you're 60 beats a minute, 5 days in a row, then life gets hard, work is getting crazy and everything else included, and all of a sudden now you're at 70 beats a minute in the morning. Mm-hmm. Well, there's a couple things I would recommend you do. 1, try to get a little more sleep. 2, make sure you up all your nutrients, right? So make sure you get plenty of protein, plenty of carbohydrates if that's what you're on, not to exceed, plenty of fats for structural purposes, not for so much energy purposes. Try to breathe a little more. If you close your eyes and you find that your eyes are pretty much twitching, then you need to start 7 seconds in, 7 seconds out through your nose. And if it takes you 40 minutes to get your eyes to stop twitching, then do that, because you're probably starting to switch over to a sympathetic only drive for your body, right? And you can't see us anymore, but everybody's shaking their heads. Yes, that's right. So we can expand upon this a little bit more in the next podcast. I think that we're coming to an end. We'll flash up a quick photo right now while we say this, but let's close it out. What do you guys think? Let's go Hoo-yah on 3.
Yup.
1, 2, 3.
Hoo-yah! Talking, they frontin'. No competition, they bluffing. They don't want nothing. Be quiet. They don't want nothing. They don't want nothing. Keep hearing them talking. They frontin'. No competition, they bluffing. They don't want nothing. Be quiet. They don't want nothing. They don't want nothing. Spit it like no other can spit it. When I spit it, automatically knock them down.